When you see the CEO going out there and working the doors, the teams will follow. That's something that I highly encourage in any organization, any size.
On this week's episode, we welcome Jayesh Parmar, a visionary entrepreneur whose journey takes us from the tech hubs of San Francisco and New York to the wellness industry and beyond. Jayesh is best known as the founder of Picatic, the innovative ticketing platform that dared to compete with giants like Eventbrite by introducing models like pay what you want and freemium pricing. His bold moves didn't just disrupt the ticketing industry, but they also led to Picatic's successful acquisition by Eventbrite. We delve into Jayesh's early beginnings, the challenges of building a startup in a crowded market, and the pivotal moments that shaped his career. We explore how dogfooding his own product influenced Picatic's success and the impact of community and ecosystem on his startup's growth. Lastly, Jayesh shares how he is now applying his tech-savvy approach to the wellness industry with his innovative tongue-scraping company, Gunkii. Now let's jump into the tank for this week's episode with Jayesh Parmar. Thanks for joining us in the tank today, Jayesh.
Thanks for having me.
You know, Jayesh, you have obviously an incredible background as an entrepreneur and founder, and I think a lot of people in Canada should know about who you are. But for some of our global listeners, it'd be great if you can give our audience a brief background on yourself, you know, where you grew up and your early career path and how you ended up becoming an entrepreneur and founder.
Sure. I mean, my name is Jayesh Parmar. I'm the ex-CEO and co-founder of a company called Picatic. Picatic was an online ticketing event management company. You know, we had these big, audacious goals from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan to go out there and penetrate the world. We did exactly that. We built a company that was predominantly an API for events, partnered up with some awesome brands like Facebook and Airbnb, and then eventually led it to acquisition. A company called Eventbrite acquired our company, and you got to see it full cycle from buying a URL to selling a URL.
Very simple. Just buying URLs and selling URLs, I guess, is what you would say. But listen, I mean, Picatic was a pretty interesting story to have, end with an acquisition by Eventbrite. But take us back to the beginning. So Saskatoon, not a place that people a lot of think of as like the up and coming, startup scene. But tell us about those early days of Picatic and, how you kind of came up with the idea and the concept of what you wanted to build.
Sure. I mean, at that age, it was a little bit unique in that time. I was putting on events, and I wanted to solve a problem. If we just back up a little bit, it was in 2008, 2006, and that time. It's going to sound a little bit weird to maybe some listeners, but at that time, selling tickets, you had to go and actually have physical tickets, and you give them out to record stores, and they would purchase buy them from record stores. So, supply chain, money forecasting, just everything was a little bit difficult to do because in order for us to know how many people were coming to events, we had to go to the record stores. We didn't have the cash. It was just convoluted. It was a problem that I wanted to solve. It's an itch of my own itch. At that time, Blackberries were the thing, and I saw there was an opportunity. I know, dating myself, saw an opportunity to go and come up with this idea of an online ticketing service where you buy your tickets online. Again, now it sounds super ridiculous to even talk about. But at that time, it was cutting edge. But the idea was to purchase tickets, like everyone does, and solve all the problems I was feeling. And I was met with a lot of confusion in the market. People thought it was a scam. It's like, well, how do I get my tickets? Well, you don't get a physical ticket; you get an e-ticket. And it's like, what is an e-ticket? It's like, well, it's like a code, or you could have it and you just show it at the door, or you scan it, and so there. We came up with all those fun little challenges of starting a company. So,
I mean, it sounds simple, obviously 10 years, 15 years later, but back then, obviously, there was copycats potentially. There was scams, of course, that people were scared of. Money transfer online was not something people were very comfortable with, but you obviously had to deal with a kind of a crowded incumbent space, if you will. Like building a ticketing platform had its challenges. What were some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome in that space?
One is to be radically candor on myself, it's just didn't have the knowledge. There was no ecosystem. Startups weren't a thing in terms of having the support in Saskatoon at that time. It's completely changed. There's great organizations like Collabs. There's so many different organizations that are now here. But so funding, the team in terms of actually putting the team together in terms of like, hey, we're going after big area audacious goal. We want to go out there and change this world. And how do we get our mind around that piece? So there's that challenge. Number one is the product, we had an idea, the team was difficult, the funding, and then, just getting traction at the early days. I think those are kind of common in terms of trying to find product market fit or an early adoption product market fit. Those are some challenges, but also there was some advantages about being in a small community that, we were able to have, a lot of these small conversations and early adopters that were friends or that were early that had some trust that helped us kind of get those stepping steps to move on. So those are the early things that we faced.
What'd you do for funding in the first few years? What'd you end up doing?
Self-funded. Yeah, self-funded. I mean, again,
sounds crazy, huh?
yeah. It was. I mean, at those days, we just convertible notes and convertible debentures. I mean, those were actual convertible notes. They were new, and I didn't really. There wasn't an ecosystem here to explain that. I then since moved to San Francisco, and I was definitely had the opportunity to be around a lot of incubators and accelerators that did champion and did empower me. But I just did not know. You don't know. And it was not something that was readily available at the time. So self-funded and just sort of like slowly inch through it. But then when you said incumbents, I mean, there's teams that that were executing a lot faster and the space got crowded fast.
Yeah, I mean, you spent some time, as you mentioned, in San Francisco. You also spent some time in Toronto and New York. What was the impetus for you to decide to relocate the company to Vancouver?
I'll start off, from Saskatchewan. We moved to the Canadian Technology Accelerator in San Francisco. Then from there, we went to Toronto. We got accepted to Extreme Startups. It was one of the early accelerators, and they chose 5 startups. We were one of them. And then we then decided to go to the Canadian Technology in New York. What made us move back is we got pregnant. We got pregnant in New York, and then we thought we were going to be an American-based company at the time, and that changed things. And so we, at the time, it was some sound advice. We had this connection to Toronto just for the simple fact that we went through an accelerator there. And this is the power of mentorship and advisors, and that had probably saved my company. But it was 5 minutes of nugget of information that I'd love to share. I remember we were figuring out where we wanted to live with the team, and it was this conversation between Toronto and also Vancouver, and we were definitely, as a founding group, we were like, yeah, we're thinking Toronto. Toronto is the fourth largest city in North America. That's where Extreme Startups were, a lot of investors were. And so as we were sitting around, and one of our advisors came in and talked to us, and was like, hey, what problem are you solving today? And this was the problem, this is where we wanted to leave. And so we talked to us for about 5 minutes. He's like, wait a second, have you guys gone home and talked to your wives and girlfriends? And we're like, no, we haven't. You guys, it's like, you guys are so foolish. He probably said it a little bit more radically than that. He's like, go home. We all went and talked to our partners, and without our partners championing us, without them having, being there and being the bedrocks, we would not have been able to ride the roller coaster that we did. In hindsight now, if we did move, I don't think we would have had that support, nor do I think we would have.
That's amazing. So the advice for founders is always check with your partner before you make a decision on where you want to live.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it sounds so ridiculously simple, but that's just sometimes you get stuck in the weeds, and having those mentors or advisors, somebody that can have that that high vantage point was helpful.
Can you share who the advisor was from Extreme Startups?
Yeah. Well, it was Boris Wirtz. He was probably the very first advisor that I met when I was starting this up, and he's been such a just
sage advice from a wise man.
Yeah. Vision 1, I believe his fund is
version 1. Yeah,
version 1. Just a really great guy and a good champion to founders in general.
That's awesome. I mean, you obviously had to go up against one of the biggest incumbents in the space, which was Eventbrite. What did you do to make yourself different and stand out? And can you share a bit more about your decision to use this pay what you want model and then eventually shifting to the freemium model afterwards?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what ended up happening is obviously we were probably one of the early adopters, and we just did not execute well. We didn't have, we had the product, we had the team, we had a little bit of traction, but we just didn't have the funds behind us to go out there and execute at the pace, and probably not the know-how. If I'm being radically candid on myself, I don't want to sound too disparaging upon ourselves, but I think that would be accurate. I guess what we end up having to do is, as we started to grow, is we became a Me Too company, if you will, and it became quite evident as all these incumbents that were a lot faster us and moving. Is our company, there's nothing distinctive about what we were doing. So what we did is we decided that, okay, we need to go out there and really be distinctive. What we did move towards like design. We want to have beautiful UX and UI, have a lot of kill switches in our product, just be known for just a beautiful, wonderful experience. And then we started dabbling in testing, as startups do. And we started testing with pricing models, and we did a pay what you want model where it was like, we was like, okay, well, what if, if there was this whole race to the bottom, how low can you go? I was like, well, why don't we just go to the bottom and see
cut to the chase?
Yeah. And so that was a unique experiment. It was unique. I don't think it was sustainable, and it was confusing to a lot of people. I mean, when you take that confusion part, like sometimes people would just send us in a check, and that's how confusing it was. So what we did, and for the people out there that don't know what a pay what you want model is, so they were able to use our platform, and they get to choose at the end what they want to pay if they want to pay. So there's a slider, and they can choose X dollars. We were suggested something to them, or they could do zero, and people did pay. Which was good. Eventually we moved our product, and we pivoted our product, and we decided that we were going to move to an API for events. Use our product as a freemium piece as lead gen. So we have beautiful product. We're going to be Me Too. We're going to use that, and then we can retarget bigger users, and then go from a software to software approach. Target the engineering communities to build on top of our platform. So it creates a little bit of stickiness. We're now doing, a B2B sale. So our cost of acquisition is much lower. Our ARPU is bigger, and our LTV, well, it's a lot tighter because, people are using this on an ongoing basis. All that being said, and going back to your question, the freemium model was a great experiment. It helped us kind of navigate in terms of, okay, value consideration, value, use data, retarget on data, and get something more sustainable, which is the software to software approach. And that was really sticky and worked for us.
It sounds like the pay what you want model allowed you to get more people into the top of funnel to kind of mess around with the product and give you maybe feedback, and also maybe find out who your true ICP customers were. But if you were talking to a startup founder today, 2024, would you recommend also trying the pay what you want model if they were just getting started with some early users and traction?
Well, I think there's two types of traction. I think that there's revenue, and often could be a lagging indicator, but I think just users, like as bring in users as much as you possibly can, because that data, that iteration in terms of what we're able to build and having that feedback loop with the actual users was giving us allowed us an opportunity to craft our product and find avenues and problems that were areas where I think that could add a lot of value to the ecosystem. That's what it did for us. Back to your question, would I recommend it? It's a complicated question. It depends on what stage you're at. It depends on, revenue's good, but users, in my case, I lean towards users. I lean towards making sure that we can solve a problem that adds a tremendous amount of value. And I think that if we can solve that and we can get that piece, I think that the pricing models and revenue will solve itself. Would I recommend them doing it? Could try, test.
I kind of like it. I'll be honest with you. I like it, especially for like pre-product market fit companies, like more product solution fit companies or MVP companies. I think it makes sense for a lot of the AI tools out there or developer tools where you're right. Like revenue is not really that important at the beginning. It's all about user feedback and engagement and utilization. And that pay what you want model kind of helps you weed out a lot of people who are like going to churn anyway. So you don't want to have to spend resources selling to them. And the ones who actually see value in it will be like, yeah, I'll pay like, $2 a month for this or $5 a month. Like it's like a pledge almost. I like that for feedback as well as understanding who the right customers to go after is, because then you develop an ICP naturally, which is super interesting. You talk a lot about eating your own dog food. A lot of us do as well for early stage startups. How did eating your own dog food at Picatic help you in success? And what did you learn from that process?
Oh man, I cannot emphasize this enough. It's just eat your own dog food. It's I will tell you this is like, we were an events-based company. Why are we not throwing our own events on? Why are we not using our own product? So we would put on our own events. We'd use our own product, and our team would go out there and work doors, and we encourage people to go to the events and get involved with the product. And I just think that what ends up happening is that iterative feedback cycle. So for example, using cases like our apps team, developing in our check-in. It's like, well, okay, we can go out there, we can do design sprints galore. We can do, customer interviews. We can do all these other aspects. Or we can go and use the app and go check people in at the door. And I will tell you that once we started implementing that piece into it at all levels, different positions, different roles, you got an appreciation for the customer. You got an appreciation for the product. You saw where bottlenecks are, and you're just like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, why is it this way? We're going to fix this. Could it be, we got an appreciation and understanding, which, goes away from empathy to sympathy. And so we can really understand exactly what the customer's needs are. And when we understand and we deeply feel the customer's need, we can serve them better. So if you have a product, you have an opportunity to go out there and dog food it, use it, do it. And if you are open to it, I highly encourage you to implement that into your culture. And it starts with the CEO. When you see the CEO going out there and working the doors, teams will follow. And I think that's something that I highly encourage in any organization, any size, but especially as you start getting a lot larger, because you can lose touch really quickly with layers and orgs.
I love that. Empathy to sympathy. I've never heard that saying before, but it's kind of like Tony at DoorDash, where everyone has to be a dasher once a month and feel what it's like to be a driver and deliverer of food, gives them the empathy and the sympathy to what it's being like to using the product. But it obviously worked. I mean, you guys hit 10 million in sales. That's a huge milestone, obviously. What was that moment like? And, what did it do for the rest of the competitors to pay attention to you?
Looking back, we did celebrations awfully, not well. And just for the simple fact is that we always had different behaves and we're always going. So if we hit a milestone, it's just like, we'd celebrate a little bit, but it's just like, okay, like here's next. We're always moving. And so like when we hit different milestones, I think the only time we really celebrate is through the acquisition really, really well, where you can just take a breath. And not that we didn't appreciate it. We just didn't romance those things. It's just like the work wasn't done.
It sounds like you regretted it a bit.
1,000%. I think that there's a lot of merit to being able to go out there and being present and in the journey. As I look back, I realized the good old days is that we were in the good old days.
And you just obviously were looking at progressing every single time you woke up in the morning and didn't take time to enjoy the moment.
Yeah, when all founders were around table and we can fit around a round table to now we're like got a scheduled time with each other. All those kind of things. So yeah, I just, every stage.
Maybe sometimes like I definitely agree. Like founders like miss those days of sitting around the coffee table, hacking it out and just, enjoying the small, like first couple of customer wins. But as things get bigger, you want to make sure like the milestones are significant enough so that you're not celebrating everything and almost like coddling the team that is underneath you too much. I get that. But it sounds like from your experience, there were significant milestones that may have not felt big enough because the goals tomorrow were just much bigger, that you wanted to continue the progress and not, maybe give the messaging to the company that you'd made it.
Yeah. I mean, that was it. Like we stayed uncomfortable a lot, and that was sort of like culture at the time. Yeah, I would have, going back, you nailed it in terms of your synopsis, but yeah, it's, I would have took a few more moments and celebrated.
That's really good advice for founders for sure. But, obviously you sold the company to Eventbrite. How did that conversation start? What was the story behind it? And what was that transition like afterwards?
You think that there's some sophisticated algorithmic process of how a company reaches out, or, there's like go between. In this, it was just a LinkedIn. Their number two, their CFO, he reached out and he said, hey, I see you guys doing some good stuff. You guys want to have a conversation. It was as simple as that.
You had never had any communication with them before. It was purely just a LinkedIn message.
No, and in fact, I mean, they were the giants in the industry. We didn't even know that they even had an awareness of us, to be honest. And so they reached out and we started talking, and then we realized really, really quickly is that we actually have more in common with each other than we don't have in common. So what I mean by that is, as we started talking, they were trying to solve the same problems. They were having the same issues that we were having. They'd had the same goals that we had. And then we realized that like it was just a great conversation with each other. They're just a phenomenal company. We really enjoyed the founders, which is Julia and her husband. It just evolved Kevin Hart's, Julia Hart's. They're just really good people.
How long did the time take from first CFO reach out to getting a consummated deal?
Oh, it was probably 8 months.
8 months.
Yeah. It was.
Was there a lot of courtship, or just like what was the reason for the timing?
There was courtship. I wasn't sure myself. That was something that I was dealing with as well. If this is what we wanted to go through, there was just some back and forth, and then the DD time takes process, and it goes through that. It's again, that's something that I definitely underestimated what that process would look like in terms of selling the company.
Any advice for founders, entering into that process today that you would give them?
Have a clean data room, as much as you possibly can. Have your CEPA agreements, have all your agreements in check in place. You don't want to be running back at the time. You think that's tomorrow's founder problem, but if you have a clean data room today, it's just one of those things where it's much easier to kind of keep your house clean on a weekly basis than when it comes to like, oh, I need to get this. And if it's not done, it creates holes. And then, there's maybe potentially more digging that comes in. So that would be my advice is keep a clean DD room or set one up if you don't have one.
And besides obviously great general counsel, what else would you say in terms of like advisor support or, consultant, M&A advisor support did you have?
Yeah, what I did, and I thought this was, and I will give myself a little bit of a pat on the back on this one, but to shed modesty, is I put an advisory board together of exited founders. And the reason being is because I had no idea, not a sniff of what I was doing. I've never sold a tech company before. People like Michelle Roanoff, Andrew D'Souza, and a few other people that have sold companies. It was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And so as things went on, I was able to get some feedback and some great little small little negotiation tips that otherwise I would not have had. But the founder psychology piece was very key to that. So I mean, you're going to end up having great lawyers. I mean, James Smith was my lawyer and still is.
Yeah, he was at LaBarge before, but now Upside Law. Yeah.
He's I swear by him. He's a great lawyer, and he helped us through the whole entire process. But having good professional support is key. Putting this small little exit advisory committee together was phenomenal. And things like negotiating. I love to tell the 3 tips, like really that if I'm okay to share them, that I learned. That I think that were kind of cool that otherwise I wouldn't have known from this advisory committee that I think might be good for founders to hear.
Yeah, please, let's hear them.
Sure. Okay. So, the 3 tips were is like when you're going and you're going through it is as it comes down near the end and the deal's done, there's going to be a handoff between the deal's done to when potentially come on as a role and you're there, negotiate a signing bonus, which was fantastic. And that was after the fact. And we're like, okay, we're going to hand this off to you. And I wouldn't have thought about it. Negotiated also, a party fund, making sure that there's some, it's like, hey, listen, our team, I want to celebrate with the team and making sure that they're excited. A good gesture would be is like, here's a little bit of a fun together.
That's interesting. We just used our Aeroplan points.
You did. Yeah, you did. Yeah. So
we used all of our company Aeroplan points to fly the company to Vegas.
So we negotiated that in, and then I negotiated, personally, some schooling. I was like, I'm looking to do the Harvard Executive Program.
That's an interesting one. Very cool. I never heard that before.
Otherwise, and there's so many other tactical things that came in, but these are some 3 things that I just like would not have thought about because I'm so busy about just getting the deal done that these little things. And again, one, it was great for the culture. It's like, they had the acquisition company. They are hosting the team, and that was great. It's like it gave us motivation to making sure that the handoff was as clean as possible. So yeah, these are win-wins on both sides, I think.
That's fantastic. All right, so you got the signing bonus, you've got the party pool funds, and then you've got the education piece. Those are great tips.
Yeah, and these are at different stages that they came in. There's these are and went to ask or negotiate those little things, because these are kind of rounding errors, and they can easily sneak them in.
And how many years did you spend at Eventbrite after?
About a year and a half.
Building out their Vancouver offices?
That's right. And then COVID happened, and so we had to close out. So I mean,
good timing on an exit, but bad timing.
Yeah. No, it's, I think that was just, luckily for myself, there was no golden handcuffs or anything. It was by choice that I wanted to be there. And like I say this, like, it is just a phenomenal company, and it was such a pleasure to be there. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different hat that I was wearing, which was cool. But like, what most people, and why I loved it is that, and I didn't think about this, is when you're first starting with a couple of guys around the room, it's pretty ego-based. It's self, we want to build this for ourselves. This is what we think we're going to do. And, this is I. As you grow and you have teams, you have families, their children. You want to make sure that, these people that are effectively now turning into the other company, you can champion them. And so being involved in the company and being able to be the champion for my team was amazing. Now, COVID happened. We had to deprecate the whole entire office. But again, selfishly, from a timing perspective, I don't think it could have worked out better for us, because COVID was not good to events companies.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously great timing on your behalf. Not that you planned it, but, lucky is a part of the game as well. But after your time, leaving Eventbrite, looking back on how the ecosystem supported you, either in Vancouver or Toronto, how are you now feeling about giving back to the startup ecosystem? And what do you think is necessary to continue to build it here in Canada?
When I was building the startup, it was a full contact sport, and we had a young child, and so he was 5 years old. And I think my wife, who is an amazing woman, her name's Nicole, and she did predominantly majority of the parenting and the heavy lifting around that piece. So I had an opportunity to be a dad and really take in a lot of parenting. My wife gave up the PhD so I could chase my dream. So between, the last few years, I've been predominantly being a dad and really doing that. Now it's come to a point where it's, my son's at 10 years old. He doesn't need me as much. So I am spending a lot more time in the ecosystem helping founders. I think it's important for exited founders to come and give back in terms of, with knowledge, with capital, as well as, giving some of that angel share back, and as well as with network and connections. That's what I am doing now. I'm actually happen to be in Saskatoon right now for a day helping out with collabs. I think that the ecosystem needs more of that. I think that it is, guys like yourself doing what you're doing, like this podcast, or helping out other founders to go out there and execute against their dreams is what we need to do. So that, I think, is something I wish I would have had more of when I was starting. So hopefully I'm trying to give that back into the.
Yeah, I mean, look, it takes someone like you to realize there's a gap, and having more founders giving back after they've exited is always a part of it. And not just sharing the good news and the rosy stories, but also the failures that happen along the way. How did your view of failure change compared to, like, obviously the early days at Picatic to what you experienced on the other side? And what advice are you giving to young entrepreneurs who may be experiencing failure for the first time? Because it feels like we have a failure-adverse culture.
Yeah, I will tell you this. Now, I'm from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, but I was born. I live in Vancouver now. Everyone knows each other, and failure was looked at as like taboo. And oh man, poor guy. When I went to the Valley, I remember going to my first networking event. I remember these guys talking about how they raised $1 million and they burned it, and they had their failure on their arm like a badge of honor. They weren't. They were kind of celebrating it, but they weren't romancing it. You know what I mean? It was just a sign of, like, okay, they cut their teeth. And what I realized is what they were doing as it took. It's like, that's how the sausage is made. But like, failure was a data point, and that's all it was to them, and that's all it is to me. Right. And it is actually the pathway to success, is that you need to fail, and you want to fail. You hear the cliches: fail fast, fail often. But I do understand, is like, I look at failure as a data point in order to do one thing, is to fail forward and continually to fail forward, just because that is how the sausage is made. And so are we romancing it? No. Are we celebrating it? Yeah. And around our dinner table in our house with my son who's 10 years old, it's like, it's like, what did you fail at today? Tell me something that you
It's a great
did.
question.
It's like, and those are, yeah, it's just like, and so in our household is like failure is not looked at like a negative. It's looked at as like the recipe to move forward, to have success. And so the founders out there is like, don't romance it, celebrate it, understand that this is exactly how the sausage is made. That's how you get to the end zone.
It's failure with an exclamation point, not a question mark. When we have founders who obviously we speak to every day, we don't ask them to tell us what's going well. In fact, it's a bad sign when you get a monthly update from an investor or from a founder and everything's just rosy. That gives us a really negative signal. When someone comes to us with the things that they're struggling with, that's when we really get excited. Because we can obviously add our advice and hopefully help them through that. But when they send us our monthly updates, we actually move the ask or the support or the help to the very top of the update. The first thing they have to write out is what are they struggling with and what do they need help with, rather than all the great things they've done over the last month. So I agree with you. Lead with failure and you will make more progress for sure. You obviously can't sit still as a founder, I'm assuming. And you started a side hustle, I believe, with your wife on a thing that I think is pretty cool. Maybe others may think it's gross, but it's called Gunkii. Can you tell us a little bit about Gunkii and how you got started on it?
Yeah. Well, it is very gross. And so it's basically, I'm an Indo-Canadian, come from an Indian background. My tongue scraping, people that don't know, it's a tool it's an oral health tool that you do and you scrape your tongue. And there's a layer of disgustingness that gets scraped off. And if you don't know about it, you'd be like, how did I live my life with this much gunk on my body? It's been around for 1,000 years through our Vedic system of medicine. I've been doing it for probably about 30 years. My parents have been doing it. But as I was growing up, I'd go and I'd play hockey and I'd be in the locker room. My, Western friends would see what I was doing. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, scraping my tongue. Like, this is normal. And they're like, what is that? And I'd show them and they'd be like, oh, grossed out. And, long and short of it is like, can I get one? And so I introduced all my buddies to it and we ended up talking about it. And as I grew, my career, my life, my bathroom got nicer, my house got nicer, my clothes got a little bit nicer, matured. But tongue scrapers weren't nice. They're either plastic or these tin things. So I decided with my wife is that we want to build the world's sexiest tongue scraper. Wanted to build, it sounds ridiculous, but to say that, but we built one of the sexiest tongue scrapers in the world. It's called Gunkii. It's been covered by Vogue and GQ, and it sells extremely well, and that's what we did. But the idea around that was how to get my entrepreneurial fix on a little bit, but still, building a company that can run from a phone, but still be a dad, and that isn't gonna demand me to burn the boats, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, first time I saw it, I loved it. I've grown up with tongue scrapers and everyone else and my friends thinks it's the grossest thing, but I've been able to convert a few of them and I have the metal ones all around. And I agree, the initial plastic ones are terrible. My dad used to use an actual knife when we were kids. Now they've gotten a lot more ergonomic towards the actual shape of your tongue. But it's really interesting to see that that's something that you chose as your side hustle with your wife. But I totally understand why. I got to ask, what's next for you think, besides Gunkii? And what do you vision, maybe your next act to look like after, being an amazing dad?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking the question. I right now, I have a lot of bandwidth in order to help companies. I really want to help founders in any particular way. So I suspect that I'm going to take some seats on some boards. I don't know the answer to the question. I just know that it's going to be in some type of support role in helping companies grow. I've been doing a little bit of, coaching and consulting on the side a little bit with some founders and helping them execute against their ambitious goals. And I just find like that gives a lot of sense of purpose. I don't think I'm ready to start another company in terms of burning the boats for another few years. My son's 10 and I'm going to wait a few years for that.
That's awesome. I mean, if we have any founders that are selling their business, maybe you'll be on their M&A advisory panel.
Whatever I can do to be helpful. And I have a really, I'm helping a lot of American companies, which is ironic at this point, but whatever Canadian founders that I can be very helpful with, I just want to help our own ecosystem help rise tides here at home.
That's awesome. Well, before we wrap things up, we always ask our guests for their fast favorites. So first off, your favorite podcast?
All In.
Yep. Nice. Did you listen to any of the recent ones from the summit?
Yeah.
I thought the JD Vance one was fantastic, and Megan Kelly was pretty cool. They were both really impressive. Next is your favorite newsletter or blog.
Okay, so it's a friend of mine. It's called Lenny's Newsletter.
Of course.
We started together back in the day in San Francisco, running around the streets.
How would you pronounce his last name? I don't want to butcher it.
Lenny Rochinsky.
He's your friend. How could you not do that? Rochinsky? Maybe that's what I was
Rochinsky,
thinking,
yeah. Because he's Lenny. He's
just Lenny.
He's just he's Lenny. Yeah.
Nice. That's a great one. Next is your favorite tech gadget.
It's not a gadget, but I'm having the most fun playing with Boardy.ai.
Oh yeah, Andrew's company.
Andrew did. Yeah, he's a Canadian founder. Again, another friend,
co-founder of Clearco.
That's right. I love just playing with it and iterating it and giving them feedback, and we talk often. So
that's pretty cool. That's the first time we've heard that. Shout out to Andrew for Boardy. That's nice. Next is your favorite new trend.
We used to do guide trips and do these guide trips, but the trend right now is wellness.
What's the most recent one you did?
It's actually happening up next week. It's going to be in Qashqai in Lisbon. It's another friend of mine that sold his company to GoDaddy, and him and a whole bunch of other exit founders are going out, and that's happening next week. But that's the new trend. It's not Vegas anymore. Maybe it's coming with age, but it's really about mental health and taking care of each other. So that's kind of a new trend that's happening in my life that I really, really enjoy. And I think it's important for founders as well to take that time.
That's fantastic. I love it. We'll have a safe trip. And next is your favorite book.
It's called Life and Work. It's Principles by Ray Dalio. I love consuming his content. I love his messaging. That's something that I kind of use as sort of a reminder and a balance.
Oh, perfect. Well, this bleeds perfectly into our last one, but your favorite life lesson.
Like I really hedge my presence on being a dad and just being more mindful of my presence. My life lesson that I am working on right now is my presence matters more than perfection. And I'm trying to be more present in my moment.
That's great advice. And it's kind of like goes back to what you said earlier about celebrating the small wins as a founder as well. So perfect way to end it. Thanks so much for joining us in the tank today with Jayesh Parmar from Picatic.
Thanks a lot.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tank Talks. We hope you found today's conversation as insightful as we did. If you're enjoying the show, we've got 3 quick things to ask of you. First, hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, or YouTube. Next, follow us and stay up to date on upcoming episodes and behind-the-scenes content on social media with Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And lastly, share the love. If you found value in today's episode, share with a friend or colleague who'd benefit too. Your support helps us bring in more amazing guests and keeps the Tank Talks engine running. That's it for today. Until next time, keep disrupting and innovating.